Hi, I am Dr. Felice Gersh. I'm your integrative physician located here in Irvine, California, here on a beautiful day. So thank you for joining me because I know you have many options as to how you use your time. Today, expanding our series on living in the era of coronavirus, I'm going to talk with you about the gut. Yes, that big topic that's involving the microbiome and how our GI tract is really intimately related to our immune system response and to even our overall survival if we ever get infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus through the pandemic known as COVID-19. So first, just a minute introduction of myself in case you haven't met me before. I am board certified in both integrative medicine and OBGYN. I take care of women and actually men across the entire spectrum of healthcare issues. And I utilize what I call my expanded therapeutic toolbox. I look at the whole person, not just one organ system, so that we can put together a therapeutic plan and lifestyle approach to keep everyone optimally healthy. Well, we are in very challenging times, one that none of us have ever faced before, a global pandemic with this novel coronavirus. So, looking at the gut, what I said is our topic for today, what does that have to do with a virus? Well, first of all, we don't typically think, at least we didn't when it first came on the scene, of COVID-19 being a GI problem. In fact, initially, it was just considered a pulmonary problem. It was thought to be something that came in through the respiratory tract, through the nasal cavities, and then would work its way down. If you didn't deal with it initially, when it was up here, it would work its way down into your lungs. And then if things got really bad and the inflammation in the lungs became out of control, people would get the response system of the immune system, which would become completely overwhelming, and then they would have terrible lung problems, shortness of breath, hypoxia, that's very low oxygen, and then possibly end up dying from a cytokine storm where the immune system just goes crazy, like a fireworks show where before the end, when every one of the pieces of fireworks, they're all lighting up the sky in every which way, and that sort of explosion of inflammation occurs in the whole body, and then a person dies. Well, that is no longer how we really look at the infection with the coronavirus. It's part of that, but it's much more than that, because now we know it can involve many, many other organ systems, and it even has a component involving the GI tract. Now, why would that be? Well, the way that this virus enters the body is through a unique kind of a method. It actually hijacks a very important receptor on the body that is called ACE2, Angiotensin-Converting Enzyme 2. Now, what does that mean? And what does this enzyme do? And why does it matter? And how does that affect the gut? Well, it turns out that we humans are amazing creatures. We have the most intricate and, when it's working, operationally fantastic immune systems to help our bodies to fight off invading pathogens like fungi, parasites, bacteria, viruses. Have you ever pondered why humans, Homo sapiens, are still around? I mean, why did we not become extinct like the dodo bird or many, 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 many other creatures on this planet who became extinct? What makes humans so special? We are not very big, we're not very fast, we don't have claws, we don't have fur. What do we have? Well, among a few other attributes, we have amazing immune systems. We live in a world where there is a war going on every second of every day involving the outside pathogens and our inside bodies. So what do we use to help maintain health when we're constantly being attacked, potentially, and sometimes not just potentially, by all these outside invaders that can be very toxic and fatal to our bodies? Well, the immune system has set up a surveillance system. And how does this work? Well, every barrier in the body has an epithelial surface. And along the epithelial surfaces, there resides immune cells, part of what we call our innate immune systems, the first responders to any sort of infectious process. Now, you can think about this and it will become very obvious. Well, where are these immune cells mostly residing? Well, 70+% of them actually are lining the gut. That's an epithelial barrier. That's a barrier between the outside world and the inside world. And why is that? How did that happen? Well, it turns out that, in ancient times, eating tainted food, infected food, bad food was probably one of the biggest threats to our existence. After all, nobody knew if anything was clean. We didn't know about bacteria, we didn't know about viruses, so anything could come in. Gastrointestinal infections were probably very common and very fatal. So we evolved to have this incredible immune system lining our GI tracts. So back to the coronavirus. Well, this ACE2 inhibitor, the receptor, the ACE2, is actually where? Now, let me just go back a minute. Forget the inhibitor part. Now, we're going to actually touch on that later. So this is ACE, Angiotensin-Converting Enzyme 2, and it's located on many, many cells of the body, not just in the nasopharynx or in the mouth or in the lungs. It turns out that this receptor is located in many organs of the body, including the heart, the vascular system, the kidneys, the liver, the brain, the stomach, the colon, the GI tract, the intestinal part, the small intestines. All of those parts of the body have ACE2 receptors. What does that mean? It means that the infection can spread and go, and the virus can enter those cells because the mechanism allowing the virus to enter those cells exists in all of those cells, in all of those organs. So what happens? Well, first the virus gets in, could be through the mouth, it could be through the nasopharynx, and then if our immune system, our amazing immune systems are not functioning optimally, the virus can increase its numbers. We call that viral load. And if you have a higher and higher viral load, the immune system cannot contain it. The virus will start to spread. And as the virus spreads, it can go through the bloodstream. We call that viremia. The virus spreads throughout the body, and then it can attach to the receptors on those different cells that I mentioned that have ACE2 receptors, and the virus can get in. So the intestinal tract has the ability to allow the virus to directly infect them. Now, the virus can cause problems unrelated to the actual receptor. It can cause problems by creating uncontrolled inflammation or by its involvement with the vascular system, which we'll touch on another day, because the vascular system is everywhere. Every organ has a blood supply. And if the vascular system becomes inflamed throughout the body, that can cause problems in any organ. And we're going to definitely talk about that in the future. Focusing on the gut today, if the gut becomes involved because you have viremia and the virus travels and gets into the gut, and it could come down through food, it could come potentially from the mouth or swallowing saliva, but we haven't really seen that by eating food you can get it. It's theoretically possible, but you can get it in the gut, not through the mouth even. You can get it through the blood supply, that the blood, of course, goes to the gut. So what if you get infected in the gut? Well, one thing has been shown, and they have published articles on this, that the gut microbiome changes. And it doesn't change for the better, it changes for the worse. So you get a dysbiotic gut microbiome. Now, let's go over the process. What happens when you have a dysbiotic gut microbiome? Well, first understand that our largest microbial populations in the body exist in the gut. We call that the gut microbiome. Contains trillions of microbes. It's very complex. It has all these different kinds of bacteria, hundreds and hundreds of species of bacteria, but it has other things. It actually has a natural population, including viruses, they call it the virome, and even fungi. So it's this very complex blend of all these microbial creatures that live in our gut, and they have very important and complex processes that they do to support our health. If they're not there doing the right thing, our bodies can't do their right thing. This is a completely symbiotic relationship. In other words, we help them, they help us. The problem is not knowing they were there. We didn't help them very well. We killed them, we tortured them, we starved them because we have chemicals in our food that damage them. We took too many unnecessary courses of antibiotics, and also in our food because they put antibiotics in our feedlot animals, so the antibiotics kill off our little good guys. All kinds of things have happened to affect. We are often born by C-section, we're bottle fed. There's just so many things that go into creating the gut microbiome to have it just right. That's not happening for too many of us these days. But we can still get by until we get this bad hit, like the coronavirus. So that is altering our gut microbiome. Now, who has an abnormal gut microbiome for sure? Diabetics, people who are obese, hypertensives, and anyone with metabolic dysfunction. Who else? How about postmenopausal women? Yes, this is so interesting. The abnormal microbes that have been found to grow in the gut of infected COVID-19 patients is similar to the dysbiotic gut microbiomes of postmenopausal women. After menopause, the gut microbiome changes because of loss of ovarian estrogen, and it changes for the worse. And it reflects the same abnormal population. They actually show the same bacteria that we don't want are overpopulating the gut in patients who are infected with the coronavirus and in menopausal women. So the people who are metabolically unhealthy, they have abnormal gut microbiomes, and it's like a chicken egg thing. Which can come first? Either can come first. But once you have both an abnormal gut microbiome and you have metabolic dysfunction, which includes menopause, all women in menopause have some degree of of metabolic dysfunction. It comes with the territory when you lose your estrogen. So whenever that happens, it becomes bidirectional. So the abnormal gut microbiome creates a leaky gut, and then when you have a leaky gut and you have these abnormal chemicals that are produced by the microbes in the gut that we call lipopolysaccharides or endotoxins, they can cross out into the immune system. I told you, so much of the immune system, 70% and more, lives around the gut. That immune system is seeing these toxins coming into its arena, and they produce inflammatory cytokines. They respond the way they're programmed to respond, to fight the invader. But the invader is a chronic, abnormal, low-grade inflammation coming from this gut that has now been altered by metabolic issues like metabolic syndrome, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and menopause. And when that happens, you have a big problem, because now you have a growing source of inflammation coming from the gut. Now, the body, when you have a very healthy body, it can control the inflammatory response because the immune cells are functioning properly. When you have these underlying metabolic problems and menopause, you have an abnormally functioning immune system, all different degrees, some more, some less. So this is where the gut is so important, to take care of it, to nurture it, because if you already start this process, if you become infected with the coronavirus and your gut microbiome is already abnormal, it's already dysbiotic because you have these underlying metabolic problems, and your immune system is suboptimally functioning because it's been misprogrammed by this chronic inflammatory stimulus that's never ending, and then you get infected, you're going to have a lower immune response. You're not going to have an optimal immune response. The bacteria are not going to be there, the right ones, to create that homeostatic event that we need to keep the gut intact. You're going to have that leaky gut, and you're going to have more spill of these endotoxins. So Because your immune system is suboptimal, if you have these metabolic underlying problems, when you get infected, you can't stop the infection at its original local location, like the nasopharynx or the mouth, and you get viremia. The virus goes all around, it gets into the gut. You have worsening gut dysbiosis. That creates worsening inflammation. What are you doing? You're adding to the inflammatory burden of the body, which you cannot tolerate. You're going to have higher levels of inflammatory cytokines produced, which ends up creating more inflammation throughout the body, leading to more organ damage, and potentially going into this ultimate final stage of the inflammatory process we call the cytokine storm. As well, when you have more systemic inflammation, you're going to feed the inflammatory process that's existing in the vasculature. And one of the problems with coronavirus infection, with the COVID-19, is microvascular disease. It's the microvascular system. The little tiny vessels are all inflamed. And then when you feed that inflammation from a dysbiotic gut, you have more damaged vessels. What happens when you have more damaged vessels? Well, they're not going to function properly to allow the processes that are normal for fighting infection, by allowing the leukocytes, the immune cells, to get to the right spots. As well, you're not going to have proper diffusion of nutrients and oxygen through those little tiny arteries, the little vessels, the microvascular system, and you will have activation of the thrombophilic pathways. The processes in the body that promote blood clotting are going to be activated by the inflammation that goes on in these little vascular systems of the body, promoting blood clotting, which you already have probably heard. This is a phenomenon that's just been recognized to occur in a small but critically important percentage of infected people. So, putting it all together, if you start out, before you get infected with the coronavirus, having a metabolically unhealthy body, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, coronary artery disease, cardiovascular disease, and I throw in menopause, because loss of estrogen creates low-level metabolic dysfunction, which can grow over time. So if you have these underlying problems, then you get hit with the coronavirus. Your immune system will have a suboptimal initial response. You will get higher viral load because your body cannot contain it. You can get viremia. The viremia can cause infection because of the ACE2 receptor in the gut. The virus itself can get into the gut cells and cause replication and damage directly to the gut. It will cause abnormal microbial populations to develop, what we call gut dysbiosis. And remember, if you had those underlying predisposing factors, you already have a dysbiotic gut microbiome. Now, you're going to have worsening leaky gut, passage of the endotoxins produced in the gut, passing through the wall of the intestinal tract into the surrounding gut-associated lymphoid tissue, the immune system lining the gut. Those immune cells are going to react to those toxins the way they're programmed, which is to put out more inflammation. You're going to escalate the state of inflammation in your body, creating more organ damage, damaging the little vessels, creating more microvascular disease, increasing the clotting factors, and the body's ability to clot is going to go through the roof, and you'll get these microthromboses, all these little blood clots forming throughout the body. That is what having an abnormal gut microbiome can do to escalate the harms of an infection with the novel coronavirus. So that's all the bad news. So what about some good news? You can nurture your gut microbiome, and you can start today. Whatever your underlying predisposing factors are, you can address them. You can't change your age. I didn't mention age because I can't change age. And you can't change that you're in menopause. But if you're a woman, you can look into taking hormones. Okay? There's now a study just started looking at giving hormones to patients with COVID, because guess what? Estrogen is very important. And we're going to talk more about that. Estrogen helps modulate your immune system to help it work properly, helps the gut, does 1,000,001 things in the body. So if you're in menopause, you could consider going on estrogen. If you're old, you can't change your age, but you can do so much to be more metabolically healthy, to restore metabolic homeostasis. And if you have those other underlying conditions, come on, get going, start doing the right stuff. So what's the right stuff? You have to eat the right food. You have to eat food to nurture your gut microbiome. You have to have lots of plants. You have to have amazing quantities of fiber. And I don't mean like a little bit, I mean a lot. You need to start introducing, you can go a little slowly because your gut microbiome isn't used to it. Take probiotics, get exercise. Exercise really can help. There's published studies that exercise will increase the diversity of the microbial populations in your gut. And diversity is key to success when it comes to a healthy gut. So you eat the right foods, you nurture your gut microbiome, you exercise, you go to sleep because your microbes, they live on the clock too. They have their own circadian rhythm. They need to live according to the day and night that we are established by our genes to live with. So go to sleep at night. That's when you make melatonin. By the way, melatonin is made in the gut as well, more than in the brain. You need to sleep to nourish your gut microbes. We can talk so much more about the role of melatonin in the gut, but what I can tell you is at night, we have a different microbial population in our gut than we do during the day. And they actually respond to the melatonin produced by the gut enterocytes, the lining cells of the gut, and even by the gut microbes themselves. And some of them swarm like insects. And they have put out different signaling agents and create different short-chain fatty acids, the metabolic byproducts. So you have to sleep, you have to eat the right food, and you have to eat at the right time. Because you got to sleep at the right time, you also have to eat at the right time. Eat a big breakfast, eat a tiny dinner, eat a medium lunch, stop snacking, get exercise, and don't forget stress. Okay, so here's the 5 R's in functional medicine for restoring the gut. The first R, remove. You've got to remove toxic food, processed food, chemicals. Come on, alcohol, out. They're not good for your gut. The second is repair. You have to work on repairing the damage, and there's certain amounts of glutamine, demulcents like slippery elm, marshmallow root. So these are supplements, and we can talk about that more. I think you're probably interested. So we'll talk about some of the supplements in another show that you can actually get. They're very simple, over the counter, to help repair the damage. Replace. Some people need some digestive enzymes. Their gut's not working right. Oh, by the way, if you don't have a good healthy gut, please take out dairy and gluten and wheat along with all the other processed foods at least for 3 months. Okay, then repopulate. You got to help the gut microbes to restore themselves. So what are you going to do? You need to take some probiotics, but even better, eat probiotic foods like kimchi, sauerkraut. There's others, tempeh. You want to eat the fermented foods. So, and then the 5th R, the last R, is not optional, it's critical. It's restore the spirit. Emotions matter when it comes to everything, including gut health. You can worry your way into an abnormal gut microbiome. So you got to work on stress. Mind-body medicine, we have to talk more about that because that is critical. So these are the things you have to do. There's no magic pill to restore the gut microbiome, to help keep you strong and resilient so that whether you get the coronavirus or just live your life, you're going to be strong and healthy, capable of responding to any adverse event that comes your way. So don't forget about the gut microbiome and its relationship to the coronavirus. It's not insignificant. Some people think it's really paramount. So I have a question or two. Let me go take a look. Oh, here's a good one. It asks about testing. How can we test our gut microbiome? Well, there are a number of commercial labs, quite a few, but recognize this is still very much in its infancy. There are, as I mentioned, trillions of bacteria, and then there's the viruses. We're not testing for all those things. We're just barely learning. We know about some of the major strains of bacteria, the lactobacillus, the bifidobacterium, and so on, the firmicutes. So there's a whole bunch that we have learned. There's so much more that we need to learn. We haven't even typed all the different types. We're just learning. We also know that doing stool transplants, fecal transplants, that it can help a lot or not. And you have to be very careful. That's why they made it illegal, just to do it on your own. So please keep that in mind. So in terms of testing, yes, there are commercial labs, and you can look into it, talk to your healthcare provider or your doctor, get a functional medicine practitioner, and you can check it out. But keep in mind, this is really at its infancy. If you do get a test, I do recommend that you get one that will do DNA testing, what we call PCR, polymerase chain reaction, as opposed to a culture. Because the culture is not very useful because many of the little critters, the microbes, they're going to die before they ever are allowed to grow in a culture, and many of them can't even grow. They may be anaerobic. They can't live on the cultures that we're providing. So do only a DNA, a PCR, if you're going to get a stool test. And do recognize the severe limitations. We're still at the very infancy of learning about typing the stool. And one last question, asking about menopause. As I mentioned this, and we're going to talk so much more about menopause because we keep learning more about the coronavirus. We see how it relates to women and menopause. So I just want to reiterate that when women go into menopause, they do change their gut microbiome. So we have to be extra vigilant to eat the right foods, to do all the things I described. And I am very much pro hormones, but not as a standalone. It doesn't replace lifestyle. You have to do it all. Sorry, no shortcuts. You have to do it all. And of course, hormones are not the solution to every problem in the world, but recognizing the role that hormones play in the body, and in this case, particularly in the gut and the gut microbiome, really makes you, when the more you know, the more you want it. So if you're a menopausal woman, perimenopausal, please find someone, whether it's me, somebody else, who actually understands hormones so you don't get all wrong information, because you can't make a right decision if you don't have the facts. So with that, I'm going to thank you for joining me for this rather complex, but I hope you found it to be incredibly interesting, because the gut microbiome is probably one of the greatest frontiers of exploration in how the human body works and how it relates to everything. Our microbial populations everywhere in our body, our immune system, our brain, our cardiovascular system, you name it. The gut microbiome is related to it. And coronavirus too. So take care, stay well, stay safe. I look forward to seeing you at our next show. Take care.